Hundreds marched through D.C. and other major cities to fight for women's rights. Plus, what will President Biden's executive action on marijuana mean for D.C.? And a football star is making a miraculous comeback. Thank you for joining us for DC News Now at 10. I'm Annalisa Gale. We have a freeze warning and a frost advisory in our area right now. We start with meteorologist Scott Sumner. Scott, what am I going to do with my plants?
Well, hopefully you brought them in, Annalisa.
I definitely didn't.
All right, so hopefully you covered them?
Look, we're working on the plants.
Okay, all right. You may not have them tomorrow then. That's all I got to say. Although in D.C. and around D.C., it'll be chilly, but maybe not quite as cold, certainly as outlying areas here. Now, as you can see with the graphic, we have quite a bit of cold air in place. We have not only frost advisories in the light blue, but we have freeze warnings in the dark blue there. That covers pretty much the Allegheny Front, the Blue Ridge Mountains, where you see the freeze warnings. Now, it's not just us in this area that are seeing these cold temperatures. Yeah, everywhere, not just here, but off to the north, off to the west, and even to the south and southwest. A lot of real estate, seeing a lot of counties under both frost advisories and freeze warnings. I'll let you know how warm, though, it'll get after the chill tomorrow morning, coming up with my full forecast.
All right. Thanks so much, Scott. Thousands of people came together in D.C. and across the country today for the Women's March. Daniel Hamburg talked to the women who traveled from near and far.
Abortion is our right. We won't give up the fight.
Thousands of women and men marched through the streets of D.C. from Folger Park to Union Square in front of the Capitol.
It's so important for women to unite together to make sure that our rights and our children's rights are protected.
I came down here to support women's rights, and reproductive health, and, it's not all just about abortion.
2, 4, 6, 7.
Many women are feeling a sense of urgency after Roe v. Wade was overturned in June.
I feel like in the past, it's kind of just been like, oh, abortion rights, but now it's real. It's for everybody, and it's the reality. We have to accept that we need to actually get out and vote.
That's why this group of friends came down from State College, Pennsylvania.
A politician has no right to say what I can and can't do with my body, and that if they don't start listening to what we have to say, we're going to vote them out.
Amid the event, there were some clashes with counter-protesters.
There were, both, pro-life, pro-choice people here.
But many women left feeling empowered by the march.
The turnout today gave me hope that we're going to be able to elect the right people into office to lead our country to a better place.
The crowd is hoping to use the momentum to turn the tide ahead of the midterm elections. Election day just 1 month away on November 8th, which could decide who has the power in Congress. In Washington, Daniel Hamburg, DC News Now.
And new tonight, Arlington County Police are investigating a deadly crash in the Williamsburg neighborhood. It happened this morning around 9 a.m. in the 5800 block of Little Falls Road. That's where a driver struck a woman in her 80s who was walking in the crosswalk near John Marshall Drive. The elderly woman later died at the hospital. She's been identified as 85-year-old Gwendolyn Hayes. We're told the driver did remain on the scene. And in Fairfax County, police are investigating a double fatal crash. It happened just before 4 a.m. on Friday at the intersection of Leesburg Pike and Chainbridge Road. That's where officers found 2 people dead in a car after it lost control and hit a light post and then another traffic post. The passenger and the driver killed in the crash were identified as 51-year-old Lori Byers of Woodbridge and 59-year-old David Turch of Triangle. Police believe speed and alcohol were factors in that crash. Those who live in Hagerstown and other parts of Washington County are reacting to the president's recent visit. And let's just say they have some mixed reaction. Some believe the visit was a sign that the president wants to bring jobs to the area, while others aren't quite on board with the Biden agenda.
Didn't vote for him. Not really approve of any of his programs.
I will tell him thank you for what you've done for the community and the country. I will definitely want to be a participant in anything he has to do.
The president is in full campaign mode now that we're just a month away from the midterm elections. After Hagerstown, the president flew to Philadelphia, then to his home state of Delaware. And President Biden made a big announcement this week saying he is pardoning people convicted for simple marijuana possession under federal law. I sat down with Donald Koshin. He's the deputy executive director of the Law and Economic Center at the Antonin Scalia Law School at George Mason University.
The president's actions seem consistent with the trajectory that the drug laws are taking at the moment. So in that sense, it seemed inevitable that some kind of federal action would be necessary. Of course, it does fall short of legislative change, which is really the only way that you can eliminate these kinds of offenses from the federal criminal code.
In terms of what happens next, what should people know if they have been convicted of federal offenses for marijuana?
So the first thing they should know is that it only extends to simple possession and not to trafficking or dealing or selling of marijuana. So it is a limited scope of relief. The second is that the Attorney's General Office, the Department of Justice, and the pardon attorney have set up a procedure by which people can apply to receive the relief of the pardon and its consequences of the consequences of that relief. So they should seek out further guidance from the White House pages that give direction to where people can go to apply for this relief.
And here in D.C., what does this mean? Because, you know, D.C. is kind of a special case.
Yeah, so to the extent that the federal laws were applying in D.C., the actual federal U.S. code, this creates a pardon for anyone who was violated or who was convicted under federal law. Now, there are other D.C. code violations as well, and since the president has control over being able to pardon those as well, the pardon extends to D.C. code violations too. So there are about 6,500, it's estimated, total federal criminal offenders which this will reach, and all reports show that we don't have an exact number of the DC violators who will be pardoned, but it's somewhere in the thousands.
And do we expect this relief for those who have been convicted anytime soon? Do we know the timeline? How long is it going to take for that pardon?
So I think the full apparatus to get the application structure in place will probably take a few weeks. And once that's in place, this is a fairly large number of applications to process. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, pardon, general pardon that has been extended by any president.
And don't forget, DC News Now is your local election headquarters. We've got the latest on where voters currently stand in Maryland. They're going to have a big decision to make when they hit the voting centers. The race is between Democrat and political newcomer Wes Moore and Donald Trump-backed Republican Dan Cox. According to a poll done by the Washington Post and the University of Maryland, Moore is heavily favored among registered Maryland voters with a 2-to-1 lead over Cox. To put that all into perspective now, 60% of voters say they would vote for Wes Moore right now, compared to 28% who favor Cox. Nearly 90% of Democrats said they would pick Moore, as well as 22% of Republicans. Independent voters were split, with each candidate gaining 38% of the vote. And we're learning that Democratic candidate for Maryland Governor Wes Moore has paid $21,000 to settle an outstanding water bill for his Baltimore home. Moore's campaign spokesperson says they're reviewing the charges, but that Moore paid that balance out of abundance of caution. The spokesperson says Moore was unaware of that bill, and the city of Baltimore has had long issues with its water billing system. Well, coming up in D.C. tomorrow, the 38th annual Army 10-miler returns in person at 8 a.m. That means several road closures and temporary detours. More than a dozen bus routes will detour as a result of the race. Blue and yellow line shuttle buses will detour until 3 p.m. Buses will not be able to access the Pentagon Transit Center, and there will be several road closures in the vicinity of the Pentagon. For more information about those closures, you can go over to Metro's website right now so you can plan ahead. Well, all eyes right now are on the Commanders tomorrow. NFL.com reporting that the Commanders are activating rookie running back Brian Robinson Jr., who was shot twice in his lower body during an attempted robbery back in August in D.C. The Commanders will take on the Tennessee Titans tomorrow. Our sports department is all on top of this, so expect full coverage throughout the day.